Meet Ananya. She's a 7-year-old from Bengaluru, and when she's in her traditional dance class, her focus is absolute. She executes complex, highly coordinated movements with a level of precision that requires deep cognitive effort. But that profound focus vanishes the moment she hits the high-pressure environment of the morning school rush. The same child who can master intricate choreography is suddenly overwhelmed, collapsing into chaotic meltdowns before she even reaches the car. Her parents and teachers react logically. They try to fix the behavior with strict discipline and detailed time management charts. Yet, despite their best efforts and consistent enforcement, the outbursts continue. When we treat a child's neurological inability to cope as a deliberate behavioral choice, we create a cycle of frustration. It frames a biological limitation as a moral failure, setting up both the parent and the child for constant friction. Eventually, that friction reaches a breaking point. When standard discipline fails to curb chronic impulsivity and mood swings, parental frustration often turns into clinical suspicion. The problem is that the visible symptoms of immature emotional regulation look remarkably like the symptoms of actual behavioral disorders. To an outside observer, a developing brain and a disordered one can look identical. As a result, children are frequently stamped with heavy clinical labels. Diagnoses like ADHD or oppositional defiant disorder are applied to what might actually be a typical developmental curve, obscuring the child's actual needs. But Ananya isn't being defiant. Her brain is responding to environmental stress exactly the way a 7-year-old's brain is wired to respond. Before we can address a child's behavior, we have to distinguish between a brain that is broken and one that is simply still under construction. This chart highlights the prefrontal cortex. It serves as the brain's CEO, responsible for high-level decision-making, logical planning, and most importantly, regulating emotional responses. While the child's emotional centers are fully active from birth, this CEO region is still in the middle of a massive construction project. It continues to structurally develop and refine its neural pathways well into a person's 20s. This gap in development means a young child can feel the full weight of stress from that feeling. The signals have nowhere to land, so they scatter into an outburst. We are often looking at a chaotic internal reality and meeting it with a rigid adult expectation for total emotional control. Real emotional regulation isn't a matter of willpower, it's a matter of biological maturation. You cannot force a brain to build these complex neural pathways faster simply by demanding better results. The speed of this maturation is highly individual, shaped by a unique combination of genetics, the child's environment, and their earliest life experiences. Treating a developmental delay with clinical interventions meant for behavioral disorders often backfires. Because these strategies don't account for the structural gap in the brain, they add a secondary layer of stress to the child, further straining an already overloaded system. A morning meltdown is rarely a failure of obedience. It is a physical system overload, a moment where the emotional demands of the world simply exceed the brain's current structural capacity. The way we handle these temporary outbursts has long-term consequences because the brain uses these early interactions as a blueprint. This link is known as the Barker hypothesis, the scientific principle that early life experiences dictate the trajectory of our health well into adulthood. When a caregiver helps a child navigate dysregulation, they are helping to wire the long-term stress response within that maturing prefrontal cortex. Supporting healthy emotional development during these years acts as a neurological vaccine. It builds the internal architecture necessary to protect against severe mental health challenges later in life. Effectively de-escalating a meltdown does more than clear the morning schedule. It provides the repetitive practice required to wire a brain for lifelong resilience. Since a child's internal biological CEO is still offline, the adults in their life must step in to serve as an external brain. For parents, this means acting as the emotional anchor. You provide the stability the child lacks by modeling regulation yourself and teaching them to recognize their own internal states. Educators also contribute by providing classroom compassion. This involves moving beyond academics to integrate emotional intelligence into the daily curriculum, using positive reinforcement to support a developing mind.
Pediatricians have a responsibility to assess a child's baseline emotional awareness before moving toward diagnoses. They must look at the foundation of regulation before labeling the behavior. This starts with basic questions. Can your child express their feelings? How long is their stress recovery? Do they have a support system that understands these biological limits? By forming this unified ecosystem, adults provide the structural scaffolding a child needs until their own brain is strong enough to hold its own emotional weight. Traditional checkups often overlook the subtle mechanics of emotional regulation. The SKIDS Advanced Discovery System is designed to provide a comprehensive look at these metrics, giving you a clear map of your child's emotional intelligence. Is your child's current level of emotional regulation protecting them, or is the world actively overwhelming them? Visit the SKIDS Clinic today to decode your child's developing mind and secure their long-term resilience.